At 3:47 in the morning, the world was asleep. Oil tankers drifted through the Strait of Hormuz as they always had, carrying the fuel that keeps modern life running. Markets were quiet. Diplomats were home. And on the bridge of an American destroyer, a radar screen began to fill with shapes that should not have been there. At first it looked like noise, small blips flickering near the Iranian coastline, but within seconds the pattern became impossible to ignore. One cluster turned into three turned into dozens, and all of them were moving fast, too fast, and all of them were heading toward the same point in the narrow waters of the Strait of Hormuz. That point was the USS Spruant. The officer of the deck didn't hesitate. He picked up the intercom and spoke the two words every sailor dreads hearing in the middle of the night. "Captain, bridge." Commander Sarah Mitchell had been asleep for less than an hour and a half. She'd learned long ago that real crises never wait for daylight. They arrive when judgment is hardest, when the body is slow, when the mind has to fight fatigue just to stay sharp. Within 4 minutes, she was on the bridge, eyes adjusting to the red combat lighting that washed the room in an unnatural glow. What she saw made her chest tighten. The radar was no longer showing dozens of contacts. It was showing more than 100. They weren't scattered. They weren't random. They were organized, fast, and coming from multiple directions at once. North, east, south, a widening arc designed to surround a single ship. This wasn't harassment. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a swarm. For decades, American naval officers operating in the Persian Gulf had trained for this exact scenario. Iranian swarm tactics were the nightmare briefing slide, something you studied, rehearsed, and quietly hoped would never become real. Small boats, cheap boats, fast boats, attacking in numbers too large for even the most advanced warship to handle comfortably. And now it was happening for real. The timing was no accident. 2 days earlier, Iran had announced live-fire naval exercises in the Strait of Hormuz. The warning had gone out over maritime radio channels, placing the exercise area dangerously close to the world's most important shipping lanes. 20% of global oil flows through this narrow stretch of water every single day. The United States had responded with unusually blunt language. Unsafe behavior would not be tolerated. High-speed approaches, collision courses, weapons trained on U.S. forces, those were red lines. Now in the darkness, those red lines were being tested. Commander Mitchell didn't need intelligence briefings to tell her what was unfolding. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy had spent decades preparing for this moment. Ever since 1988, when the U.S. Navy crushed Iranian conventional forces during Operation Praying Mantis, Iran had drawn a hard lesson. Fighting America ship for ship was suicide, so they changed the game. Instead of matching American firepower, they embraced asymmetric warfare. Hundreds, possibly thousands, of small, expendable boats. Each one cheap, each one fast, each one crewed by young men taught that martyrdom was honor. One speedboat might cost a few tens of thousands of dollars. One American missile used to destroy it could cost millions. The math favored the attacker. By 2026, estimates suggested Iran had between 3,000 and 5,000 fast attack craft. Some were simple speedboats. Others were purpose-built for combat, capable of speeds over 45 knots and armed with heavy machine guns, rocket launchers, and even anti-tank missiles. Their doctrine was brutally simple: attack from every direction at once. Overwhelm defensive systems, create chaos. You don't need to sink the ship. You just need to kill sailors, damage the hull, and make the cost of staying in the Gulf too high for American politicians to ignore. That logic had nearly sunk the USS Cole in 2000. And now history was knocking again. Commander Mitchell had seconds, not minutes, to decide what this meant. Under international law, American ships had the right to defend themselves. But what counted as hostile intent? Fast boats approaching at speed? Threatening, yes, but were weapons trained? Was this an attack or a test designed to force the Americans to fire first? The fog of war wasn't outside the ship, it was inside the commander's mind. At 4:03 a.m., the first warning went out over the radio. Unidentified vessels, you are approaching a United States naval warship. State your intentions. Silence. The call was repeated in Farsi. Still nothing. By now the ship's crew could feel it. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And as the swarm closed in, the difference between peace and war was shrinking by the second. And that was only the beginning. Warnings, psychology, and the edge of war. At 4:06 a.m., Makoltaludio Star Founder Doer to acquire Blof. What did he subicundadelabolthi 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 Commander Mitchell made the call no captain ever wants to make unless there's no other choice. General quarters. The alarm echoed through the ship. Sailors bolted from their racks. Doors slammed shut. The destroyer transformed from a patrol vessel into a combat machine in seconds. Deep inside the hull, the Combat Information Center came alive with radar tracks, threat assessments, and weapon status displays. Above them, the swarm kept coming. The USS Spruant was built to fight advanced enemies. Its Aegis combat system could track more than 100 targets at once. Its radar could see far beyond the horizon. But it had been designed with missiles in mind, not dozens of small boats skimming across the water at high speed. The ship's defenses were layered. Big guns for distant threats, medium guns for closer targets. And finally, the last line of defense, a rapid-fire system sailors jokingly called R2D2. It could shred anything that got too close, but it only carried seconds worth of ammunition. Seconds mattered when you were facing 100 attackers. At 4:11 a.m., the lead boats crossed the 5-mile mark. At their current speed, impact was minutes away. The ship maneuvered, trying to present its strongest defensive angles. There was no perfect position. Against a swarm, every choice was bad. Some were just less bad than others. Another warning went out. Horn blasts. Radio calls in multiple languages. Clear instructions to alter course and slow down. The response, when it came, chilled everyone on the bridge. "We are coming, prepare to die." Another voice recited a religious verse. Another laughed. This was no longer ambiguity. This was psychological warfare. Iranian commanders understood American rules of engagement better than most Americans did. They knew U.S. officers were trained to avoid escalation. They knew firing first meant investigations, headlines, and political fallout. So they pushed as close as they could without technically crossing the line. It was a deadly game of chicken. Commander Mitchell escalated again without firing. Long-range acoustic devices blasted ear-splitting warnings across the water. Flares lit up the night sky, revealing dozens of gray-painted boats, weapons clearly mounted, crews visible. The formation spread wider, zigzagging, staggering, designed to confuse targeting systems and force defenders to choose who lived and who didn't. These were not amateurs. These were professionals. At 4:16 a.m., with the boats inside 3 miles, Mitchell made one final attempt to stop it without bloodshed. She ordered warning shots, 25 rounds splashing into the water ahead of the lead boats. The message was unmistakable. Turn back now. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. Then the lead boat surged forward. Its engines screamed. Its bow lifted, and the gunner swung his heavy machine gun toward the American destroyer. That single motion changed everything. A weapon trained on a U.S. warship was no longer ambiguous. It was hostile intent. Weapons free, the order unleashed controlled violence. The closest defensive system engaged automatically. In less than 2 seconds, the lead Iranian boat ceased to exist, reduced to debris, fire, and fragments. Instead of retreating, the swarm attacked. Rockets streaked through the night. Explosions erupted in the water around the ship. Machine gun fire raked the hull. One rocket slammed into the stern but failed to penetrate. The air filled with noise, light, and chaos. Helicopters lifted off, firing precision missiles that erased individual boats in blinding flashes. The destroyer accelerated hard, trying to break out of the kill zone. Every weapon that could fire did fire. This wasn't a cinematic battle. It was messy, loud, terrifying, and fast. And it wasn't over. The cost of the swarm. The fight lasted nearly an hour, but for the sailors inside it, time warped. Seconds stretched, minutes vanished. Missiles destroyed boats with surgical precision, but there were never enough missiles. Guns overheated, ammunition ran low. The math Iran had bet on began to show its teeth. American weapons were better. Iranian numbers were bigger. One helicopter took a hit and barely made it back to the deck. Rockets splashed so close they soaked gunners with seawater. Shrapnel tore through steel. When the Iranian boats finally withdrew just after 5 a.m., the water behind them was littered with burning wreckage. 31 Iranian boats destroyed or disabled. Dozens of Iranian sailors dead. But the American ship was not untouched. 2 U.S. sailors were dead. 11 wounded. The destroyer's hull was scarred, its crew shaken. And just as the guns fell silent, a different battle began. Iran immediately claimed the Americans had attacked without provocation. Diplomatic protests followed. Demands for international condemnation. Calls for emergency meetings. Washington responded with its own statements. Self-defense. Clear warnings. Hostile actions. The president was more blunt. Iran attacked. America responded. Allies reacted in different ways. Some backed Washington fully. Others urged restraint. Oil markets spiked. Insurance rates soared. Tankers paused. The world held its breath. Then something unexpected happened. Iran stopped. No follow-up attacks. No missile strikes. No escalation. To some analysts, this meant deterrence worked. To others, it meant Iran had achieved what it wanted. proving it could strike, impose costs, and walk away without triggering all-out war. The two American sailors killed that night were young, one manning a gun, one tracking threats on a screen. Their deaths would never show up on oil charts or diplomatic cables, but their families would feel the impact forever. This is the part of war that never fits into strategy papers. Pain, absence, memory, what it all means and why it matters. In the end, the confrontation changed nothing and everything. The Strait of Hormuz remained open. U.S. ships stayed on station. Iran's broader strategy didn't shift overnight, but something had been proven, in blood. Iran had shown it was willing to sacrifice lives to make a point. America had shown it would fire when pushed far enough. Both sides learned lessons they would carry forward. For Commander Sarah Mitchell, the night ended with a medal, and lifelong memories she didn't want. When asked what she felt before giving the order to fire, she didn't talk about tactics or rules. She talked about weight, the weight of her sailors' lives, the weight of the enemy's lives, the weight of choosing who would die. That is the reality behind every headline. The Strait of Hormuz flows on. Ships pass through, the world moves forward. But beneath the surface, politically, militarily, psychologically, nothing is calm. And the next time the radar lights up at 3:47 a.m., the choice may be even harder. Do you think this incident prevented a larger war, or made one more likely? Was Iran testing limits, or rehearsing for something bigger? Drop your thoughts below, and stay tuned, because the next confrontation may not end with speedboats.